"Ma'am, I need you to stand." The words buzzed through the stillness of the first-class cabin like a cold blade. Madison Cole looked up, her hand resting lightly on the champagne glass, still chilled to the touch. It took her half a second to realize the command was directed at her. The flight attendant, Heather Sloan, stood before her, her smile thin as a drawn wire, polite enough to conceal the disdain simmering beneath her skin. Behind Heather stood a white man in a crisp gray suit, one hand resting on the seat divider as if the spot naturally belonged to him. Colin Hart, regional manager for Orion Air, wore the calm expression of someone long accustomed to privilege. He placed his expensive leather briefcase on the floor without a word. The message was clear. Move. Passengers nearby held their breath. A few phones tilted subtly, ready to capture what they sensed would become mid-air drama. Madison glanced around and saw the curious eyes, the lowered chins pretending to read newspapers, everyone waiting to see what she would do. "This passenger is a preferred passenger, ma'am," Heather said, her tone smooth but metallic. "The system made an adjustment to the seating. We'll need you to move to premium economy." Premium economy. The words fell like ink onto white paper, spreading, staining, irreversible. Madison looked at her boarding pass resting neatly on the armrest. 2A, first class suite. Booked 3 weeks in advance, priced at half a mid-level employee's monthly salary. She pressed her lips together. It wasn't about the seat. It was about the way they made her disappear, as though her presence polluted the air around them. She had seen this before, in investor meetings where people addressed her assistant instead of her, at conferences where eyes slid past her as if she were glass. And now, even aboard an aircraft owned by Orion Air, the very company about to sign a $700 million deal with Apex Grid Systems, her own company, to build their entire digital infrastructure, she was being treated as an inconvenience. Madison took a slow, steady breath. At 41, she had learned one truth. Real power never needed to shout. It only needed to wait for the right moment to speak. "I believe there's been a mistake," she said, her voice calm and low. "This seat was booked under my name." Heather smiled politely, the smile of someone who believes policy protects them. "We have the right to reassign seats for priority passengers, ma'am." Priority passengers. The phrase hit like a slap of ice. Madison nodded, rising slowly. Every movement radiated a quiet composure, the kind that comes from knowing you could bring an entire system to its knees with a single command. As she stepped out of the first-class suite, Colin had already taken her seat, fastened his belt, and poured himself a glass of champagne. He had no idea that the woman he had just dismissed was the one holding the digital lifeline of his airline in her hands. And Madison knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a complete redefinition of power. As the first-class cabin door clicked shut behind her, that tiny sound echoed in Madison's ears like a verdict. No one said anything. No one defended her. No one asked why. They just watched. In premium economy, the light was softer, but the air felt heavy. Madison had been assigned seat 5C, the aisle seat, surrounded by passengers absorbed in their phones and headphones. No one knew she had just been downgraded from first class. But she knew, and Heather knew, and Colin definitely knew. Madison leaned back, her hands gripping the edge of her seat. That familiar feeling returned, the quiet sting of being underestimated, even though she oversaw thousands of employees and ran a corporation that powered the digital infrastructure of more than 10 major airlines. She remembered the early years, sitting in boardrooms where men's eyes slid past her as if she were invisible, when her words were cut off mid-sentence and her ideas repackaged under the label of team contribution. Back then, her grandmother, Evelyn Carter, had told her, "They'll try to make you disappear twice, Madison. Once because you're a woman, and once because you're black. Your job is to make your presence undeniable without ever having to shout." Madison pressed her lips together. Evelyn was gone now, but her words still pulsed through Madison's chest like a drumbeat. A young flight attendant approached. She had warm brown skin, and her name tag read Maya Torres. Her voice was gentle. "Miss Cole, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. I know that wasn't right." Madison looked up. In the young woman's eyes, she saw the truth Orion Air tried to hide. Fear. "It's all right," Madison said it softly. "Sometimes the most expensive lesson is the one everyone can see." Maya bit her lip, then placed a premium amenity kit on Madison's tray table. "It's the last one from first class," she whispered, before walking away quickly. Madison opened the bag and found a pen engraved with the Apex Grid Systems logo. An idea flickered, not of anger, but of strategy. She pulled out her phone and reread a message from Daniel Pierce, her COO. "Contract with Orion Air, ready for signature tomorrow morning. 700 balances. They're fully dependent on our security platform." Madison let out a silent laugh. Irony. Orion Air, the airline that had just diminished her as an ordinary passenger, was about to hand over its entire system to her. In the row ahead, a salt-and-pepper-haired businessman glanced back at Madison, then quickly looked away. Perhaps he saw something in her eyes that made him uneasy, a stillness with the force of a storm behind it. Madison leaned her head back and closed her eyes. No tears, no anger, only calculation. Every breath she took now was a command waiting to be executed. Behind her closed eyelids, she could almost see the soft blue glow of 1,000 servers sleeping, ready to awaken with a single line of code. And she knew the moment was coming. People think power is thunder, she thought, but in truth it begins with silence, just before the storm breaks. Seat 5C wasn't bad, if you were ordinary. But Madison Cole had never been ordinary. From that position, she could see the thin outline of the curtain dividing first class from the rest, a line as sharp as a blade. Through that narrow gap, the golden light spilled out, glinting off the champagne glass in the hand of Colin Hart, the man who had taken her seat. He was laughing, reclining comfortably, the kind of man who believed the world existed to serve him. Madison straightened up and inhaled deeply. The scent of new leather in this lower cabin mingled with the faint chemical tang of disinfectant. Everything was clean, convenient, adequate. But to her, the space felt like a message whispered through polished surfaces. "This is where we think you belong." Across the aisle sat David Lawson, a man whose suitcase bore an Orion Air Platinum tag. Every so often, he stole glances at her. When their eyes met, he pressed his lips together and nodded faintly. a silent acknowledgement that he knew what had happened, but dared not intervene. Madison gave a small, forgiving smile. She was used to it. The world was full of witnesses to injustice who stayed quiet for fear of losing their privileges. In front of her, a young mother, Lucia Morales, was soothing her sleeping child. Her eyes, unlike the others, held compassion. She whispered something to the person beside her, shaking her head softly while looking toward Madison. The ripple of silent unease spread like waves in still water. Maya Torres returned and placed a glass of water on Madison's tray. "I want to apologize again, Ms. Cole." Madison looked at the young woman, her smile kind, but edged with quiet resolve. "Don't apologize for something you didn't do. Just don't forget what you saw." Maya's eyes glistened as she nodded and walked away. Madison looked around. No one spoke, but she could feel the presence of the cameras. Some phones were angled discreetly, some passengers pretending to scroll through the news while secretly recording. She knew one video, one timely hashtag, could ignite a storm. But Madison didn't want to go viral. She wanted control. She unlocked her phone. A message from Daniel still sat unread. "Flight 372, test environment connected to Orion's live servers." A door opened in her mind. If she wished, a single signal could freeze the entire Orion air infrastructure within seconds. She leaned back, her fingers brushing the edge of her phone like a commander caressing the trigger. Not out of anger, but out of principle. In first class, Colin raised his champagne glass, laughing at something Heather had said. He had no idea that just a few meters away, a woman was quietly counting down to the moment that would flip the entire system he was flying on. Madison closed her eyes. In her mind, Evelyn's voice returned. "Don't shout to be heard, my dear. Just know when to flip the switch." And in that instant, Madison knew the darkness was about to light up. The engines roared as the plane's body trembled gently, preparing to leave the runway. The premium economy cabin tilted slightly, the overhead lights shifting to a pale golden hue. Madison Cole opened her eyes. Her gaze was sharp as a scalpel, quiet, yet untouchable. A new message appeared on her phone screen. Daniel Pierce. "Final draft approved. Orion Air contract ready for signature at 9:00 a.m. tomorrow. 700 million confirmed." Madison let out a faint chuckle. 700 million. A number big enough to change a corporation's destiny. But for her, true value didn't lie in money. It lay in the right to be treated with dignity. And at this very moment, Orion Air had placed itself in the perfect position to learn that lesson. She switched to the Apex Grid security application. On the screen, dozens of glowing nodes formed a vast, interconnected web. The entire digital infrastructure of Orion Air. The system status read, "Integration ready for activation." With a simple swipe, the command window appeared. Madison drew a deep breath. Protocol 5 verification. It was a feature designed for emergencies. If a security breach or unauthorized access was detected, the system would automatically freeze the entire network until executive-level clearance was provided. She didn't need to destroy anything. She just needed to remind them who held control. People love to talk about power, she thought. But few understand that real power doesn't need force, it only needs precision. Madison typed the command. Initiate Protocol 5. Orion Global System. Priority Override. MC Alpha 9721. She paused for a brief moment, her eyes glacial, then pressed send. One gentle touch, but thousands of miles away, inside Orion Air's data center in Boston, rows of warning lights flared red. Streams of data turned crimson. Dashboards flickered. Night shift engineers looked up from their monitors, faces drained of color. Meanwhile, in the sky above, Flight 372 continued its ascent, perfectly smooth. No one knew that at that very moment, every Orion Air operation across the globe had just gone still. Madison leaned back and closed her eyes. What she felt wasn't satisfaction, it was timing. In first class, Heather leaned over to whisper something to Colin. He smiled, signaling for another glass of champagne. That's right, Madison thought. Drink, because that's the last glass you'll be served under your so-called privilege. A soft blue light flashed across her face from her phone, the signal confirming the command had been executed successfully. She put it away and sat still. In the quiet night sky, the lightning had struck. No one heard it, but by morning, their entire world would. At Orion Air's operations center in Boston, the monitoring screens that had once glowed with steady green suddenly erupted into a blazing sea of orange and yellow. Hundreds of alerts flashed across the system, alarms echoing through the data floor. "What the hell is happening?" demanded Priya Menon, Chief Digital Officer, rushing to the main console. Engineers scattered across the room, fingers flying across keyboards. "An automated system verification just triggered, ma'am," reported Kevin Cho, the night shift engineer. "All servers are locked. We can't access transactions, flight schedules, or ticketing systems." Priya's brow furrowed. Verification triggered by whom? Kevin swallowed hard and looked at the command line streaming across the screen. Initiated by MC Alpha 9721, Apex Grid Protocol. He froze. "It's an Apex Grid command, ma'am, authorized by their CEO." The room fell silent. Priya looked up, the neon lights reflecting across her forehead. "Where is she?" Kevin checked quickly. "On Flight 372, Boston to Seattle." Priya stared at the monitor, her pulse quickening. "On one of our own planes?" At that very moment, high above the clouds, Flight 372 glided through silver skies. In premium economy, Madison Cole sat in perfect composure, the light from her phone reflecting against her calm, sharp features. A new message appeared. Daniel Pierce. "Madison, Orion's entire system is freezing. What's going on?" She typed back. "Nothing, just a lesson." From the front cabin, Colin and Heather's laughter drifted back, light, carefree, oblivious. Madison tilted her head slightly, her gaze settling on the curtain ahead. If they knew that with a single line of code, she had just grounded every Orion airplane at the gates, that laughter would die in their throats. She didn't want to destroy. She wanted to awaken. People like Colin never learned from apologies, only from consequences. On the ground, chaos spread through airports. At JFK, passengers crowded around the gates, screens flashing. "Delayed. System verification pending." In Dallas, the loudspeakers repeated constant apologies. In Chicago, a shift manager shouted, "We can't print boarding passes. The whole system's locked." Robert Langford, CEO of Airline, stormed into the emergency operations room, his face dark with anger. "Can someone tell me," he growled, "who just froze this entire company?" Priya turned, her voice steady but firm. "Madison Cole, CEO of Apex Grid Systems. She's on one of our flights right now." Langford froze, half in disbelief. She did this? For what reason? Priya met his gaze, her tone low but cutting. Maybe to remind us that power doesn't just sit in first class. Up in the sky, Madison leaned her head back and closed her eyes. The plane flew smoothly, but below, the entire Emir of Orion had ground to a halt. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to rage. She only needed to touch a single key. "They thought I was small," she whispered. "Now they'll see how big I truly am." The Orion Air headquarters in Boston, once bright and alive like the central nervous system of a giant organism, now flickered with warning lights that pulsed like an erratic heartbeat. Every control system, from ticketing to data storage to crew coordination, displayed the same message. Security Verification Protocol 5. Executive authorization required. CEO Robert Langford stood in the center of the operations floor, his tie loosened, eyes bloodshot, after 2 straight hours staring at the monitors. "Say it again, Priya. Who activated it?" Priya Menon's voice was hoarse from stress. "The authorization code is valid. Top-level clearance. Initiated by Apex Grid, specifically Madison Cole." Langford froze. "She's on one of our planes. How could she possibly?" Priya interrupted, holding up the access logs. "The command was sent the moment Flight 372 left the runway. The system verified it down to the millisecond." Langford gripped the back of a chair, the veins on his neck standing out. "She just froze the entire Orion network. Thousands of passengers stranded. Hundreds of flights delayed. Every minute costs us millions." Kevin Cho looked up from his station. "Sir, we can't decode or override the command. It's embedded within Apex Grid's security layer." Langford exhaled sharply. "Fine. Then get her on the phone." Meanwhile, in premium economy, Madison sat calm and unshaken. The glow of her phone lit her face with a pale, moon-like sheen. Message after message appeared, from Robert Langford, from Priya, from Terence at Apex Grid, all with the same subject line: "Urgent. Call us now." She silenced the notifications and let the phone rest quietly in her hand. She knew that right now, in 3 data centers across Boston, Chicago, and Dallas, hundreds of engineers were sweating over keyboards, trying to bring the system back online. She also knew that within 10 minutes, every line of communication, from the media to Orion's board of directors, would be echoing her name. Madison closed her eyes, remembering the Tech Fusion meeting more than a decade ago, when a manager had asked if she was sure she understood global network infrastructure, simply because she was a black woman. That day she smiled and handed in her resignation. 6 months later, Apex Grid Systems was born. She opened her eyes, feeling the faint tremor of the aircraft, not from turbulence, but from the quiet surge of control running through her veins. In the row ahead, a passenger whispered to his companion, "I heard Orion's system is down. No planes can take off." Madison heard every word. She smiled faintly, saying nothing. There was no need to tell them she was the reason. Up front, Colin leaned back in his seat, sipping champagne, blissfully unaware that every sip was counting down to the moment he would face the consequences. They think I'm just a passenger, Madison thought. They're wrong. I'm the system they're begging to bring back to life. Above the thick layers of clouds, Flight 372 flew smoothly, as if the sky itself had no idea that below, the entire Orion air network was paralyzed. In the cockpit, Captain Victor Nguyen glanced at the control panel. A strange notification blinked on the secondary screen. Notice: Orion operations under security review. Maintain standard procedures. He frowned. In 15 years of flying, he had never seen anything like it. You ever seen this before? The CO pilot asked. Victor shook his head. Never. Looks like the ground system is locked. Just then the radio crackled. An urgent voice came through from headquarters. Flight 372. Urgent message from command. CEO Langford requests immediate contact with passenger Madison Cole on your flight. I repeat, passenger Madison Cole. Victor turned his head, eyes wide in disbelief. A passenger. Not just a passenger. The voice lowered, steady but tense. She's the CEO of Apex Grid Systems. Silence filled the cockpit. Victor slowly leaned back, understanding the full weight of what that meant. Apex Grid, the company that powered every layer of Orion's technology infrastructure, and she was sitting just a few rows behind him. In premium economy, Madison remained calm, reading a document on her tablet. She heard a soft ding over the intercom, the call signal for the lead attendant. Moments later, Maya Torres approached, her voice respectful but cautious. Ms. Cole, the captain would like to see you. It seems things on the ground are getting serious. Madison closed her tablet, her voice steady and low. I figured as much. Every eye in the cabin followed as she rose. Some passengers had already seen her name spreading through their phones, the rumor that the CEO of Apex Grid was on the flight that had just shut down all of Orion Air. She walked down the aisle, her back straight, every step deliberate. The curtain to business class parted slightly, and a wash of white cabin light spilled through, catching her face in a cold, commanding glow. In the space between cabins, Captain Victor stood waiting. He removed his hat and gave a slight nod, a gesture of respect. Ms. Cole, he said quietly, I've been instructed by CEO Langford to meet with you as soon as possible. They say you're the only person who can restore the system. Madison met his gaze, calm and unwavering. No, she said softly. I'm just the one who built it. Victor stayed silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. Understood. I've also been instructed to restore your original seat, 2A. Behind them, Heather and Colin overheard the words. Heather's face drained of color, while Colin sat up sharply, his brows tightening. What? Victor turned toward them, his tone firm and authoritative. Direct order from CEO Langford. Miss Cole is to return to seat 2A immediately. Mr. Hart, you'll be moved to business class. The air froze. Heather opened her mouth to protest, but Victor's look stopped her cold, the look of a man used to giving orders that were not to be questioned. Colin stood up, his face flushed with anger. Do you have any idea who I am? I'm the regional manager for this airline. Madison stepped forward, her eyes locking onto his, calm but sharp enough to cut. Perfect, she said softly. Because today, I'm going to show you exactly how your system works, when it stops. Colin went rigid. Heather lowered her head, and Madison, the woman who had been humiliated barely an hour earlier, was now escorted back to her first-class seat by the captain himself. In the cabin, a few passengers began recording. Others whispered, "She's not just a passenger, she's the one who owns the system we're flying on." Madison gave a faint smile. She never had to raise her voice. She only had to flip the switch. The air in first class was thick, charged like the calm before a storm. The curtain parted slightly, and Madison Cole stepped in, her posture straight, her eyes sharp and cold beneath the reflection of the crystal lights overhead. Captain Victor Nguyen walked beside her, each step measured, commanding every gaze in the cabin. In seat 2A, Colin Hart looked up, his ears flushed red. "What the hell is going on?" he barked, yanking off his headphones. Victor didn't answer. His expression remained firm, his tone steady but unyielding. "Mr. Hart, there's been a mistake in seat assignment. Passenger Madison Cole will be returning to her original seat. You'll need to move to business class." Colin scoffed, half laughing as if he'd heard a joke. "I'm the regional manager of this airline. She's just a passenger. I have priority. Do you understand?" Victor's reply was calm. "I understand. But the order came directly from CEO Langford, and your system, at this moment, is locked." A murmur rippled through the cabin. A man in row 3 pulled out his phone to record, while a woman nearby whispered, "That's Madison Cole. She's the CEO of Apex Grid." Colin turned to Madison, disbelief flickering into dawning realization. "Who are you?" he stammered. Madison met his eyes, her voice low and steady. "The woman you thought you could push to a lower class," she said, her tone cool and controlled. "And the same woman whose company your airline entrusted with its entire digital infrastructure. Today, you've seen what happens when you underestimate a system you don't understand." The silence that followed was absolute. Heather Sloan, the flight attendant who had once smiled as she asked Madison to give up her seat, now stood frozen at the end of the aisle. Colin forced a laugh, trying to salvage his dignity. "This is all just a misunderstanding. There's no need to make it a big deal." But Victor cut him off, voice firm and final. "Mr. Hart, this is a direct order from headquarters. Please move." Colin rose slowly, his face twisted in restrained anger. He packed his bag, folded his laptop, and glanced at Madison, but couldn't meet her gaze. The entire cabin watched in swan as he walked out. Heather approached cautiously, her voice soft and trembling. "Ms. Cole, I'm so sorry if there was any inconvenience." Madison sat down in seat 2A, fastening her seatbelt with deliberate calm, her eyes fixed forward. "It's fine," she replied, her tone glacial. "Inconvenience isn't the issue. Disrespect is." Heather froze, then stepped back, her face pale. From the adjacent seat, Charlotte Whitmore, a member of Orion Air's board of directors, leaned slightly toward Madison and spoke quietly. "I saw everything. You didn't just reclaim your seat, you redefined your place." Madison turned to her, a thin smile cutting across her lips like a blade. "No, Mrs. Whitmore. I just turned the switch back on, the one they tried to shut off." As the captain exited the cabin, whispers rippled through first class. The woman who had been forced out of her seat an hour earlier was now escorted back by direct order of the airline's own CEO, and the man who had mocked her now sat hunched in business class, surrounded by people who once admired him. Madison looked at the champagne glass freshly refilled before her. Golden bubbles rose to the surface, quiet, proud. They don't need to know how I struck back, she thought. Only that from this moment on, every decision they make will pass through my hands. The plane cut through the still night air, but inside first class, the atmosphere was taut as a drawn string. Everyone could feel it. Something had shifted. It wasn't just a seat that had been reclaimed, but the balance of power itself. Madison Cole sat once again in 2A, poised like a queen restored to her throne. The cabin lights cast a soft glow across her face, half illuminated, half shadowed, just like the dual nature of the power she now held. Calm, yet commanding, graceful, yet formidable. Her phone vibrated. On the screen appeared a name, Robert Langford. She smiled faintly. Finally, she answered, and the voice of the Orion Air CEO came through, steady on the surface but laced with unease. Ms. Cole, I want to begin with an apology. What happened on that flight was unacceptable. I take full responsibility. Madison glanced toward the curtain, where Heather stood rigid in the business class section, her eyes lowered. I don't need an apology, Mr. Langford, she said softly. I need change. The line went silent for a few seconds. What do you want? He asked. Madison leaned back, her voice measured and even, every word landing with deliberate precision. 3 conditions. Langford's breath caught. First, I will restore Orion's system the moment this call ends. I'm not here to cause damage. I'm here to make a point. Langford exhaled, a flicker of relief crossing his tone. Second, Madison continued, tomorrow's $700 million contract will include a new clause. Apex Grid will not only provide technology, but also oversee Orion's corporate culture. We'll integrate metrics of fairness, transparency, and social accountability into every operational phase. Langford hesitated. That's unprecedented. Madison replied coolly. So was what your employees did today. I'd say we're even. A pause lingered. She could almost hear him calculating on the other end. And the third condition, she said, her tone dropping, steady and sharp. I want an independent audit of Orion's passenger service policies. Who gets upgraded? Who gets downgraded? And why? I want real data, not excuses. Langford didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, a mix of exhaustion and reluctant admiration. You're asking us to change the structure of the entire company? No, Madison said calmly. I'm giving you the chance to save it. She heard the faint tap of a pen against wood, a familiar sound of someone surrendering with dignity. Then Langford spoke slowly, clearly. I agree. To all your conditions. Madison's smile deepened slightly. Good. Then the system will be restored now. She opened her laptop and typed a single command. Terminate Protocol 5. Restore full access. AUTHEF. MC Alpha 9721. The cabin lights glowed softly, and the plane vibrated gently as if in acknowledgement. Below, across the globe, thousands of Orion flights shifted from delayed to active. Madison looked out the window. Beneath her, the city shimmered like veins of light. They think I did this for revenge, she thought. They're wrong. I did it so they would learn respect before they have to pay the price for forgetting it. The soft ding signaling stable flight echoed through the cabin, gentle but enough to make every passenger on Orion Air Flight 372 look up. On the small screens before them, a new message appeared. All flights on time. Whispers spread through the aisles, a mix of surprise and relief. No one truly knew what had just happened, only that rumors were swirling about a powerful woman who had somehow frozen an entire airline and restored it with a single touch. In first class, Madison Cole sat calmly in seat 2A, as if no storm had ever passed. The warm golden light above reflected off her champagne glass, bubbles rising quietly, shimmering like the thoughts gathering in her mind. Across from her, Charlotte Whitmore, a member of the Orion Air Board of Directors, set her pen down, her voice filled with awe and respect. I just got a message from Langford. He approved all the new clauses in the contract. Do you realize what you've done, Madison? You've changed the operational model of an entire airline. Madison smiled faintly, her gaze drifting toward the moonlit sky outside. No, Charlotte. I just made them see what they chose to ignore. That power doesn't live in logos or priority cards. It lives in how people treat each other. At the back of the cabin, Heather Sloan, the lead flight attendant, who had once asked Madison to give up her seat, walked forward, holding a tray of water. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly. Ms. Cole, her voice cracked. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I was wrong. Truly. Madison studied her for a moment. In Heather's eyes, she saw fear, but also the faint spark of awakening. Thank you, Madison said slowly. But don't apologize for an action. Change the way you see. Heather nodded, stepping back. The light from the cabin glinted off her tearful eyes, and for the first time that night, she felt she had truly served someone worthy of respect, not for status, but for strength. In business class, Colin Hart sat hunched over his phone, his face pale as headlines spread across every social feed. Black CEO removed from first class, one call later. Airline's 700 pounds freezes instantly. Seat justice trend, the flight that grounded an empire. The video of the captain personally escorting Madison back to her seat had already reached hundreds of thousands of views in just a few hours. Comments flooded in. That wasn't just a seat. That was a reminder that respect can't be bought. Colin set his phone down, his face burning with shame. For the first time, he understood what it meant to be excluded from the circle of privilege. No one looked at him with admiration anymore. Only silence remained, the heavy silence of a man who had destroyed his own image. When the plane touched down in Seattle, no one clapped as usual. The cabin remained quiet. Passengers exchanged glances, then looked toward the woman in seat 2A, calmly closing her laptop, her expression serene, as if she had just finished a meeting, not a revolution. Charlotte turned to her, her tone warm and low. Tomorrow, when you sign that contract, they'll realize you're not just selling technology, you're selling them a lesson in humanity. Madison smiled. No one is born deserving respect, but everyone has the right to reclaim it. As she stepped off the plane, the light from the exit door fell across her face, forming an image so striking that many passengers instinctively stood. There was no applause, only quiet reverence, as if honoring dignity itself. The next morning, at Orion Air headquarters in Seattle, the conference room buzzed softly. On the big screen glowed the new contract, its title clear and bold: Apex Grid Systems, Executive Agreement with Cultural Equity Framework. Robert Langford looked across the table at Madison, his face weary but sincere. "Ms. Cole, I've reviewed the clauses you added. I admit, we need to change. And I want you to know, what you did yesterday made me reflect on how I've led this company." Madison nodded. "That's all I ever wanted." She signed her name. One signature, the beginning of a new chapter. Beside her, Charlotte leaned closer and whispered, "You just redefined the term, preferred passenger." Madison replied, "From now on, it means every passenger deserves to be prioritized in dignity." Langford's voice grew quiet. "If there's one thing I've learned from you, it's that sometimes silence can shake an empire." Madison smiled softly. "And sometimes to turn the light back on, all you need is to know where the switch is." 3 years later, the International Conference on Ethics and Equality in Aviation, New York. The hall was full. Madison stepped onto the stage, poised and steady, streaks of silver in her hair glinting beneath the lights. Below, hundreds of airline executives, technology leaders, and policymakers stood in applause. She began her speech, her tone deep and deliberate. 3 years ago, I was just a passenger asked to leave her seat. Today, I stand here not to retell that story, but to talk about what it awakened: responsibility. Behind her, the screen displayed the data: decrease in discrimination complaints between cabin classes, 42% improvement in transparent priority policies, 53% increase in positive feedback on passenger fairness. "This isn't a miracle," Madison continued. "It's the result of a single press of a button, not to destroy, but to restart trust. Because true power isn't about making people fear you, it's about making them change." In the front row, Robert Langford, now chairman of Orion Air, and Charlotte Whitmore nodded with pride. Beside them sat Maya Torres, the young flight attendant from that night, now Global Operations Director, her eyes glistening as she watched. When Madison finished and stepped down, the audience rose in thunderous applause. In that moment, she thought back to that fateful flight, to the humiliation of being told to leave her seat, the mocking laughter, the condescending stares, and the single command, Protocol 5, that had changed an entire industry. She felt no regret, no anger, only gratitude. Because it was in that moment of being diminished that she had learned how to elevate thousands of others. As the stage lights bathed her in gold, Madison closed her eyes, hearing once more the voice of her grandmother, Evelyn Carter, the woman who had taught her the strength of silence. "Sometimes, my dear, you don't need thunder to light up the world. You just need to know where the switch is." Madison smiled and lifted her chin, the lights reflecting in her steady eyes. She knew she had turned that switch on, not just for herself, but for a world learning at last how to stand tall again. People often think justice is something loud, a thunderous verdict that demands to be heard. But Madison Cole proved the opposite, that sometimes power doesn't need noise. It only needs precision. She didn't seek revenge, nor did she crave sympathy. She simply acted at the right moment, in the right way, so that entire systems would relearn one simple word: respect. From a stolen seat, she reclaimed something far greater: dignity, not just for herself, but for everyone who has ever been dismissed or overlooked. So if you've ever been underestimated, ever been pushed aside, remember Flight 372 and the woman in Seat 5C, who taught the world that silence can shake an empire. If you believe that respect is not a privilege, it's a right, then like, subscribe, and share this story. And before you go, leave 3 words in the comments: I stand tall. Because sometimes, standing tall is all it takes to change the world.